Hello and welcome to the Sport for Business Daily. We're joined today by Professor Denis Kinane, who is the co-founder and chief medical officer of a company called Signpost that played a major role in getting sport back into our stadia and our arenas, in this particular case, onto the European Tour golf circuit. You're very welcome to Sport for Business, Denis.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
Tell me something. Sport in terms of coming back has been a real boost to people's morale, to people's sense of the fact that normality will resume at some point. The European Tour was one of the first major sporting organizations to bring it back, but it was a very complicated bringing back because you had players coming in from all around the place. You, as a company, completed over 11,000 PCR tests to ensure the safety of those that were participating and the fact that the European Tour could come back. Where did the initial contact come from? From the dark days of everything being in lockdown to the moment where a realization was that we could try this?
Yeah, so that's taken us back a little bit when COVID really just arrived. So it would have been about March, April, May that we were actually planning this. We had been working to try to help the governments with respect to PPE, et cetera, as a not-for-profit. We existed already at Signpost as a company. The point was then that we had existing relationships with the European Tour, the PGA, and they asked us to look into this possibility of actually getting golf back safely, ideally, and also to tick boxes with respect to government approval of golf coming back, because that was the other area that we were concerned about. So we set up this concept, which I can take you through, which is essentially to create a very safe bubble, test people before they arrive, test them when they arrive, keep them isolated until we get the tests, and then get them to play golf, be socially distanced as best they can, but be in a very safe bubble for that period. Now, I have to tell you that the bubble wasn't just the golf course. It was also everybody related to the golf course, including drivers and including the hotels that housed those people. So we kept everybody housed, everybody working the hotels, everybody doing the catering, etc. We're all tested, and we're all negative also. And we had a few people we had to exclude, but the really good news is that we never had any event spread. So that was one of the things we were very proud of.
An excellent job to make sure that happens during the course, not only of as we were emerging from the first lockdown, but then going into the second wave, and you're continuing with it now by over the weekend as the world is in its third wave. The extent of the bubble. So you tested players, or players produced a test before they departed, and then you took over when they actually arrived at the course on the Tuesday or the Wednesday before the tournament.
That's about it, yeah. But in addition to that, before they left, and many of these tournaments would have been back to back. So for example, on the Sunday, we would start to test the golfers that would then be going on to the next tournament. So we'd be supplying that additional test. So in effect, it was twice a week for the period, the contiguous period that was actually the golf tournament. And that worked very well for us, and it worked very well for them. I have to say that the golfers, they had a lot of issues initially with respect to the oropharyngeal, nasopharyngeal swabs. Some of them just didn't like it. And I'll say the Spanish liked it less than anyone else, I'll tell you. So we had a few notable famous golfers that always ran a mile when they saw me coming with the swab, so put it that way. But they were great. And we also have to say that they did a really good job of actually observing the rules, keeping the distances, and being able to work and play their sport, but actually stay in the hotel bubble. That must have been a little bit like prison for a while, but kept them all safe in the end. And I think that was the main thing. We got golf back in that sense.
I know what it's like to have some insight in terms of the logistics of running a major golf competition, which are huge. Obviously, without spectators, certain elements of that were removed this time. But from your point of view as a medical company, what were the logistics like in terms of you having to produce a team to be there on site at one tournament after another?
Yeah, well, we had some excellent support. We had the Chief Medical Officer, Andrew Murray, that gave us some tremendous support, as did Mark Casey, who was organising. And these guys are really excellent with respect to logistics. Also, Dave Sturgis, our own logistics expert, was on hand. So we brought the team together in terms of our swabbers and our PCR technicians, and we had them set up on site. It was well run, and it was efficient, and really just, I'm taking hats off to all of these people, because it went clockwork pretty well, and the golfers very much appreciated it. And we had so many people come and visit these PGA events and just went away just thinking, my goodness, this is what we need to do for other sports.
It was obviously a great success. We didn't get the Dubai Duty Free Irish Open played at Mount Juliet because our own government restrictions were tighter at the time. But it was played up in Galgorm Castle, up in Northern Ireland, and it'll be back to Mount Juliet this year. Were there other countries where there were challenges in terms of the efficacy of what you were doing, their trust in terms of what the European Tour was going to be able to do, or was it, had you proven the concept to such a degree that many of the host countries were willing to just take that on trust?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing was that the Chief Medical Officer, Andrew Murray, plus others, were in good conversations with the public health of each of the countries. So we had very good rapport with, let's say, Austria and Spain, Italy, and whatever. By and large, all of the countries that actually did good testing themselves were easier to work with than the countries that, let's say, were a little bit less, stringent. And strangely enough, almost the less stringent countries were also the ones that actually made most demands on us, sometimes that we then had to defer the testing to their own labs rather than did them ourselves, which was also a little bit of a concern. But one of the issues was in all of these scenarios was to actually work well with the public health on the ground in that country, respect the protocols, respect the culture, et cetera, and by and large that worked out pretty well. I mean, we had a lot of good relationships with various countries' public health services, and they loved us and we loved them, and we were very grateful to them for all their support.
You managed to get 2020 done, the full complement of competitions that were scheduled once we were able to get back to action. 2021 has already kicked off. Wonderful scenes from Dubai over the weekend, and our own Padraig Harrington doing very well. What's the horizon now for your continued involvement? Because we still don't have spectators, we still don't have visibility of when that's likely to change or come back. And as we all know, we're still in the midst of this crisis. So what's your horizon in terms of an involvement with the European Tour? Will you be there on board for the rest of this season?
We're very good partners with the European Tour, and we'll be there to support them. We will be there to support them as they will be for us through very changing landscapes. We're looking now at, for example, the UK. By mid-February, we'll have 25% of people vaccinated. We'll have 10% of people, 15% of people who've already had COVID. This is changing the landscape. And yet we're also looking at new variants coming in. And we're also looking at currently what we've got right now is a fairly secure bubble around the players, the officials, et cetera. But yet we'll need to get spectators back at some point. The live spectators are going to be important for the sport. And therein lies a challenge. We're looking at various faster, more public related measures of actually testing that will albeit give you an okay or an assurance of negativity for a much tighter time period, but at the same time might be possible. So we're looking at these right now. We've got to be comfortable with them, and we may use them in limited ways going forward. So we're already starting to use them in some of the events, and this will roll out. So I don't know when, Rob, if you ask me, when will we get full stadia back in, say, the GA or in rugby or in football? But essentially with golf, we'll be heading towards limited spectator participation as soon as we can.
Okay, and you mentioned about the vaccine and the rollout. It's, the numbers will continue to rise, but it's likely to be the summer or September even before there's there's a significant enough portion of the population. From your perspective, if somebody produced a certificate of vaccination, would that remove the need to then do the PCR test, or have you crossed that bridge yet?
That's a great question, and the answer is that we honestly don't know. The scientific community doesn't know if that individual would, even although they would be very extremely unlikely to be affected by the virus themselves, whether they would still be able to grow some virus and be able to spread some virus. And the thinking is they probably might, and we know that because we have such high levels of symptomatics and asymptomatics. Asymptomatics being individuals where the by and large, the penetration of the virus has not been massive, not been really damaging to the individual, and those people pass on the virus very readily. So the chances are that we might have to keep looking at this question. And your question is a very good one. Someone vaccinated or someone had COVID before, okay, so they won't get affected by the virus, but would they still be potential spreaders? And the answer is it's possible, unfortunately.
Okay, we've heard so much of the way that sport can return, the way that people can be tested, so much from people who don't have necessarily the right background to actually be holding forth on this. But it has been a pleasure to talk to you as a medical professional who has been there, done this, and has crafted a solution to enable the European tour to come back. Thanks very much for taking the time to be with us today.
Thank you, Rob.
With everything as it goes through this year. And for now, for the moment anyway, from Signpost, Professor Denis Kinane, thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you.